It was called the unsinkable. It was held up by engineers as the ideal of shipbuilding. It was known by man as the incorruptible form of human achievement. It was called the Titanic, named after a race of Greek gods, the Titans, known for their strength and their perseverance. And yet, on a cold night, early in its maiden voyage, the ship drifted. There was negligence at the helm, and suddenly the ship's seams opened up, and the unsinkable began to take on water. Today we're watching as the seams in our culture open up, and as the moral foundation of our country begins to be flooded over with a tidal wave of secular culture invading it. Even the very documents that were supposed to preserve our nation's Christian integrity are being thrown away and even being used as weapons against us. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, supposed to be bulwarks for the Christian moral standing of the United States culture, are now being used to promote secular agendas. For example, the Constitution and the Declaration are being used to promote that some have the right to happiness while denying the others the inconvenient right to life. We condemn the Holocaust of the Jews, and rightfully so, because we were able to see their faces and visualize their sufferings. We're able to ignore the Holocaust of the unborn children because we never hear their cries. There are multiple examples of this. The culture is stripping away the basic principles of American government with the Christian underlines because it's seemingly unacceptably religiously charged to have any Christian emblem on any government building or project. It's a terribly sad situation our government is in today. But I do not bring a message of despair. While we may contemplate the great moral danger our country is going into, I bring a message of hope. I'd like to persuade you today that it's time to turn our attentions away from this lost, evil, and corrupt world around us, and to recognize that it's time to refocus our vision toward heaven, and to grab souls to take with us on our voyage to the country beyond this world's shores. George Washington once said that the growth of this country to the character of an independent nation shows the product of a providential agency. And I really smile when I hear quotes like this, quotes by our founding fathers extolling the power of God in our nation's history. It's absolutely fantastic stuff. I really like reading that kind of stuff. But it kind of leaves a bitter aftertaste when we reflect how far from that kind of mindset we've drifted. When we realize that the founding fathers understood that we could only remain true as a society if we remain tethered to the biblical principles of morality, and then when you consider exactly where our government stands on those same issues today, it's truly alarming. The government believes that anything that's in the most religiously charged has to be done away with in the name of freedom for all religions. But of course these things are morally charged, because we were supposed to be a nation under God, endowed by our Creator, in whom we trust. Actually, in 1892, which, by the way, was not the year that Columbus sailed the ocean blue, the Supreme Court handed down a decision in which they said, our laws and our institutions must be based upon the laws of the Redeemer of mankind. It is impossible that it should be otherwise. And in this respect, and to this extent, our laws and our institutions are emphatically Christian. This from the same body that years later would give us Roe versus Wade, a decision that would institutionalize a Holocaust of life 5 times greater than Adolf Hitler accomplished in his lifetime. We have now killed 51 million unborn children in the United States. So what's this all mean? I mean, we can despair when we look at exactly where our country is in our moral state today. But that's not what I want to do. Actually, I'd like to say that we have really been blessed with this time of spiritual growth that we had here in the United States. And the fact that we're seeing the secular culture creep in should not be unexpected, nor should it cause us to be afraid. After all, Christians across the ages of time were not blessed with a haven such as we've had here in the United States. Our time of persecution, our time of trial is coming. And instead of being fearful about that, we need to look to the past and understand exactly what founded other Christians and what did they place their trust. We know the story of the Titanic. That great colossal ship, as I said before, known as the unsinkable form of human achievement. But that night it did drift astray, and it hit an iceberg, and it opened up a hole beneath the waterline. And the men on that ship realized, as the ship started to sink and to tilt, that there was nothing they could do about it. But they grabbed the women and children and threw them into the boats that could convey them to life. Today, as my analogy stands of the United States culture being like that of the Titanic, something that we thought was unsinkable in its moral sureness, is now sinking away beneath us. But instead of despairing, we need to recognize that it is in the hand of God, as it always has been. And instead, like those men on the Titanic, we need to realize it is our responsibility to begin to grab the lost souls stuck and trapped in this lost and dying secular culture and show them the way to safety. Because if we don't, we will be judged as an impotent Christian generation who knew the way to safety but did not conduct the lost to life's shores. So, what's our response? C.S. Lewis once said, when you look at history, it's those Christians who thought most of the next world who had so much effect in this. It is since Christians have lost sight of heaven that they have been so ineffective in this world. And that is a really beautiful concept. The fact that by changing our focus toward heaven and toward the eternal value of human life and our position here on earth, that we gain all the value. And the other thing, the problem that we have is we seem to think that the beautiful things we find in this culture are of the culture. C.S. Lewis also once said, the books and the music in which we thought the beauty was found will betray us if we trust to them. For what came through them was longing. They are not the thing itself. They are merely the scent of a flower we have not yet found, music from a tune we have not heard, news from a country we have never yet visited. And that is a beautiful, beautiful concept, that all that we find to be true and lovely and good in this world is merely an expression of our longing to go to that country to which we are destined to go. The fact that all the little beautiful things we see here on earth are merely revelations of God's goodness that shall be revealed to far greater extent in the world hereafter. And that should be a tremendous motivator for us. Abraham Lincoln. Abraham was a man to whom God promised a great many things in the Old Testament, not the least of which was the promised land itself. But Hebrews 11:13 through 16 give us a really interesting perspective into the life of Abraham. It says, they that say such things confess that they are strangers and exiles on the earth. But if they speak, and that they are seeking a better country. And if they had wished to go to that country from which they went out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is a heavenly one. And therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Abraham was promised the Holy Land, the Promised Land, and yet Scripture tells us that even as he journeyed across the plains of earth, that he was looking to journey across the plains of time to that country, the heavenly country that God was preparing for him. That he had such an eternal focus that he was willing to do away with the temporal promised land that he had been given, and instead his focus was on the world to come. We today need to recognize that we are on a journey. We are on a journey that cannot be stopped, to a land that cannot fade away, the glories of which we have tasted but poorly here. Now, if perchance you listen to this and you're not a Christian, I have one thing to say to you. Come with us. We are on a journey to a country where even sin and death and even hell and the grave must fall away from us. So come with us. For the Christian listener, I say, pray that God may heal our land. But turn your eyes upon Jesus. Remember that it is only when we are focused on heaven that we can best save sinners from hell. Tell them the good news. Tell them about heaven for his glory.